Have you ever wondered if kings in ancient times worried about money like we do? The answer is not really. Their wealth wasn't about having a big bank account. It was about absolute power over everything. Imagine this. A king didn't just own a castle. He owned the entire country. All the land, forests, and mines were his personal property, providing endless resources. Plus, kings had the ultimate money hack. They controlled the minting of coins. If a king needed more funds for a war or a lavish palace, he could simply order new coins to be made, sometimes with less gold or silver in them, effectively creating money out of thin air. And taxes weren't always cash. People paid in crops, livestock, or even labor. So, the king's treasury was constantly restocked with real, tangible goods. Ultimately, their secret wasn't just having money, it was controlling the entire economic system. Ever wondered why you never hear tales of ancient kings stressing about their credit score or saving for retirement? It's not because they were all born with a magical money tree in the royal garden. The truth is far more fascinating. They weren't just players in the economic game. They were the ones who owned the game board, wrote the rules, and could flip the table over whenever they wanted. Imagine King Theron, ruler of a vast and prosperous kingdom. He strolls through his grand hall, not to check his bank account, but to survey a map of his lands. Alaric, he calls to his young scribe, report on the harvest from the northern valleys. Alaric unrolls a scroll. Your Majesty, the yields are bountiful. The royal granaries are overflowing, and the tithes from the villages are arriving daily. You see, for a king like Theron, wealth wasn't just a pile of gold coins. It was the land itself. Every field, every forest, every rivulet, all belonged to him. This was the ultimate asset. Land produced food, timber, and minerals. It housed the people who paid him taxes and served in his armies. Unlike a fluctuating stock market, land was tangible, productive, and the bedrock of his power. He didn't need to buy resources. He owned the source. A modern billionaire might own a portfolio of stocks, but a king owned the entire economy's raw materials. Now, let's talk about actual money. When King Theron needed to fund a new castle or a military campaign, did he apply for a loan? Of course not. He simply ordered more coins to be made. Alaric, he might command, instruct the royal mint to strike another 10,000 silver coins. This is a power we can barely imagine today, the exclusive right to create money. He was the central bank, the treasury, and the government all rolled into one. Let's say the royal coffers were running a bit low on silver. No problem. The king could simply decree that new coins be minted with less silver and more copper. This practice, known as debasement, was an ancient form of inflation. The face value of the coin remained the same, but its actual precious metal content dropped. Suddenly, the king's existing silver could be stretched to create many more coins. It was a clever, if sometimes unpopular, way to finance his ambitions without raising taxes directly. He was literally making money out of, well, almost thin air. But what about the everyday economy? How did the kingdom function? Let's meet Lyra, a merchant in the capital city. She sells fine wool and pottery in the bustling market square. When she pays her taxes, it isn't always with a pouch of coins. Your Majesty, she might say, presenting her dues to a royal tax collector. Here are 10 bolts of our finest dyed wool for the royal household and 20 amphorae of wine, as is your due. This is a key difference. A significant portion of the king's income wasn't currency at all. It was goods and services. Taxes were often paid in kind as share of the harvest, livestock, or crafted goods. Peasants might owe labor, working a certain number of days a year on the king's personal lands, known as the royal domain, or on public projects like roads and bridges. This system insulated the king from cash flow problems. If a war disrupted trade routes and coins became scarce, it didn't matter as much. The royal court would still be fed from the harvests of his own lands. The army would still be supplied with food and materials collected as taxes in kind. The economy was a direct physical flow of resources to the crown, not an abstract dance of numbers on a ledger. Contrast this with a modern CEO. They might be incredibly wealthy, but they are still subject to the rules of the financial system. They have to worry about interest rates, market crashes, and currency fluctuations. They QONT just decide to print more dollars or demand that their employees pay them in wheat and chickens. Their wealth, vast as it is held within a system they don't control. King Theron, however, faced a different set of worries. His concerns weren't about balancing a budget in the modern sense, but about maintaining control. His biggest fears were a bad harvest leading to famine, a rebellion from powerful nobles who also controlled vast lands, or an invasion from a neighboring king who wanted to take his primary asset, the land itself. His financial management was really about statecraft, military strategy, and ensuring the loyalty of his subjects. Let's return to the throne room. King Theron is discussing a new project with Alaric. We need a new bridge over the river Eldoria. It will improve trade and allow our armies to move faster. Alaric looks concerned. Your Majesty, the treasury is low on gold after the last campaign. Theron smiles. He wasn't thinking about gold. Alaric, my clever scribe, you think too much like a merchant. We don't need gold to build a bridge. We need stone, timber, and labor. The stone will come from my quarry in the west, the timber from my forests in the east, and the labor will be provided by the villages along the river as part of their annual duty to the crown. See to it. Alaric's eyes widen in understanding. The king wasn't spending money, he was allocating resources that he already owned. This is the fundamental secret of royal finance. A modern government has to tax its citizens' income, then use that money to hire contractors and buy materials. King Theron simply commanded his own resources directly. It was a far more direct and powerful form of economic control. This principle extends to trade as well. While merchants like Lyra facilitated commerce, the king often controlled the most lucrative trade routes, ports, and markets. He could grant monopolies, impose tariffs, and collect customs duties, ensuring a steady stream of wealth flowed into his coffers from the economic activity within his realm. He didn't just participate in the market, he set the rules and took a cut from everyone else who did. So, the next time you're juggling bills and worrying about your savings, remember the forgotten rule of ancient kings. True, unshakable wealth isn't just about having a lot of money. It's about controlling the system that creates and distributes resources. King Theron didn't need a financial advisor because he was the entire financial system. His wealth wasn't a number in an account. It was the fertile soil, the flowing rivers, the deep forests, and the loyal labor of every subject in his kingdom. He wasn't just rich, he was the source. Have you ever found yourself stressing over a credit card bill or saving up for a big purchase and thought, man, I wish I was a king? It's a fun little fantasy, right? No financial worries, just ruling a kingdom and living in a giant castle. But what if I told you the reason ancient kings didn't have modern money problems wasn't because they had a bottomless bank account. It was because their concept of wealth was completely different from ours. It wasn't about accumulating cash. It was about absolute, total control. Let's dive into the world of King Theron and discover the forgotten rule of true wealth. Imagine King Theron, a powerful ruler, not pacing his throne room worried about the kingdom's quarterly earnings report. Instead, he looks out over his vast domain. From the towering mountains to the rolling hills and fertile river valleys, he doesn't just govern this land, he owns it. This is the first and most fundamental pillar of his wealth. In our modern world, we think of wealth in terms of stocks, real estate investments, and bank balances. For King Theron, the land itself was the ultimate asset. It was the source of everything. The forests provided timber for building ships and castles. The fields grew the grain that fed his armies and his people. The mountains held precious metals like gold and silver. He didn't need to asterisk by asterisk these resources. They were inherently his. The entire kingdom was, in essence, his personal estate. The peasants who worked the land weren't just citizens. They were tenants on his property. Their labor directly enriched him, not through a complex system of wages and taxes as we know it, but through a direct flow of goods and services to the crown. This direct ownership of the means of production gave him a level of economic security that is almost unimaginable today. He wasn't playing the market. He was the market. Now, let's talk about something we're all familiar with: money. Imagine a merchant, let's call her Lyra, examining a silver coin. She's savvy. She can tell by its weight and feel if it's pure. But here's the catch. The only person legally allowed to make that coin was King Theron. This is the second pillar of his power, the monopoly on minting currency. When we need more money, we have to earn it. When King Theron needed more money, he could, quite literally, make it. His face was stamped on every coin, a constant reminder of who was in charge. This wasn't just about ego. Controlling the mint gave him an incredible economic tool. Let's say he needed to fund a war or build a magnificent cathedral. He could order his minters to create new coins. But here's the clever part. He could also engage in a practice called debasement. This meant reducing the amount of precious metal, like gold or silver, in each coin and mixing in cheaper metals like copper. The coin still looked the same and had the same face value, but it cost him less to produce. To a merchant like Lyra, this could be frustrating. Over time, she might notice she needs more coins to buy the same amount of wool because the silver content has dropped. This is essentially a form of inflation, engineered by the king himself. He could effectively create wealth out of thin air to finance his projects, a power no individual or corporation has today. He controlled the very definition of money within his realm. He wasn't just a player in the economic game. He was the one who set the rules and could change them whenever he wanted. It's like being the banker and the player in a game of Monopoly and also owning the company that prints the money. You can't lose. So, the king owns all the land and controls the money supply. But how does he fund the day-to-day operations of the kingdom? The guards' salaries, the castle upkeep, the lavish feasts. This brings us to the third pillar, taxation and dues. But forget about filing your taxes online. Royal taxation was a much more direct and tangible affair. Let's picture our scribe, Alaric, meticulously recording the kingdom's income. He wouldn't just be tallying up gold coins. His scrolls would list cartloads of wheat from one village, barrels of wine from another, and bolts of cloth from a town of weavers. A significant portion of taxes was paid in kind, meaning with goods and produce rather than cash. This system made perfect sense in an economy where a lot of the population were farmers who might not see much hard currency in a year. They paid their dues with what they had, the fruits of their labor. Furthermore, there was the concept of the corvée, which was a tax paid in labor. Peasants could be required to spend a certain number of days a year working on the king's projects, building a road, digging a moat, or helping with the royal harvest. King Theron didn't need to worry about a budget for public works. He had a ready supply of labor he could call upon. This direct claim on the goods and labor of his subjects meant the royal court was largely self-sufficient. The castle's kitchens were stocked by the kingdom's farms, its cellars filled with the kingdom's wine. King Theron lived directly off the productivity of his realm, bypassing many of the complex financial mediations we rely on today. He didn't need to go to the grocery store. The grocery store came to him. So, let's bring it all together. King Theron owns the land, the source of all material wealth. He controls the creation and value of money itself. And he has a direct claim on the produce and labor of everyone living on his land. When you look at it this way, you start to see that his position wasn't just about being rich. It was about having absolute control over the entire economic system. This leads us to the forgotten rule of wealth that these ancient kings intuitively understood. True, lasting wealth isn't about how many coins you can accumulate within a system. It's about controlling the system itself. King Theron wasn't worried about stock market crashes because he owned the farm. He wasn't worried about inflation because he was the one causing it. He wasn't worried about supply chain issues because he controlled the supply chain from the raw material to the finished product. In our world, we are participants in a vast, complex global economy. We work for money to buy things that other people have produced. Ancient kings like Theron operated on a different plane. They were the architects of their own much simpler, but completely controlled, economic reality. Their financial worries would have been on a completely different scale. Things like a bad harvest, a rebellion, or a rival king invading. These were threats to their control of the system, not problems within it. So the next time you dream of being a king to escape your financial woes, remember King Theron. His secret wasn't a magic money tree or a secret vault of gold. It was a simple, brutal, and effective principle. Don't just play the game, own the board. Thank you so much for watching and exploring this piece of history with me. If you enjoyed this journey back in time, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more deep dives into how our world used to work. Let me know in the comments what other historical topics you'd like to explore. Until next time, stay curious. Ever feel stressed about your finances, bills, savings, investments? It's a constant juggle. But have you ever wondered if kings in ancient times worried about money like we do? Picture King Theron, ruler of a vast kingdom. Does he check his bank account? Does he worry about the stock market? The short answer is no, and the reason why is fascinating. It's not just that they were rich. It's that their entire concept of wealth was fundamentally different from ours. Imagine your scribe, Alaric, tasked with managing the kingdom's finances, you wouldn't be looking at spreadsheets or stock tickers. Instead, your primary concern would be land. In King Theron's world, land was everything. It wasn't just a piece of property. It was the ultimate source of power and wealth. The king owned, in theory, all the land in his kingdom. This meant he controlled the forests, the rivers, the mines, and every farm. Think about it this way: if you own the factory that produces everything, do you need to worry about the price of the goods? Not really. The king owned the factory of his era, the land. He didn't need to buy food. He received it directly from the produce of his royal estates. He didn't need to purchase lumber for his castles. He simply ordered it cut from his forests. This direct control over resources meant he was largely insulated from the kind of market fluctuations that give us headaches today. His wealth wasn't a number in an account. It was tangible, real, and self-renewing. Now, let's bring in Merchant Lyra. She's a savvy trader who deals in goods from across the continent. She understands the value of currency, the gold and silver coins that facilitate trade. But even she knows who truly holds the power. King Theron doesn't just spend money, he makes it, literally. In our modern world, we focus on earning money to buy the things we need. The ancient king simply took the things he needed. It's a profound shift in perspective. It teaches us that wealth has always been about control. Today, that control might look like owning the platform, the patent, or the infrastructure, rather than the land. But the underlying principle remains the same. The one who sets the rules of the game will always have an advantage over those who are just playing it. Thanks for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this as fascinating as I did, do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden corners of history. Let me know in the comments what other historical puzzles you'd like to explore. Until next time, stay curious.